Before we get to episode 143, I wanted to tell you a little about Believe You Can 2021. It's the annual talent show put on by the Keystone chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. Like last year's, this year is going to be virtual again. So if you've got a talent, we're looking for performers. Whether you can sing or dance or tell jokes, they've got to be clean. Go to BelieveYouCan.live. That's BelieveYouCan.live. Fill out the form and send it to Lisa. She'll get back to you with all the particulars. If you want to win cash, go to BelieveYouCan.live, fill out the performer form, and get it to Lisa. You can also go to BelieveYouCan.live to buy tickets. I hope you'll do so, and we look forward to seeing you on the 16th of October.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 143 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode, and I've really only got one topic. It's kind of two because travel is involved, and when travel's involved and you can't see, it's maybe more than one. So I'm going to talk about last week's trip to New York and the All Blind Football League's fantasy draft. And I can't talk about the project that went along with it, but I can talk about the travel and the draft itself, which was a lot of fun, and I'll get into that in a second. But as you know from last week's episode where I talked to Jason and Anthony from Straight Off the Canvas, I talked a little about the PCR test that I needed to have to go to New York and to do the draft in person. And I got an email either the day that I took the test last week or the day after. And I thought it was from someone named Donna Tripley. This is pretty funny. And when I was coming home from the draft, and I'll get into this in a minute, I didn't feel so good in the car. And again, I'll talk about this in a minute. So as I wasn't feeling well, I thought, maybe I better get another PCR test after a couple of days to make sure that while I was in New York, I didn't get COVID and am now spreading it in Swarthmore to mainly Liz, who then would go in front of these little tiny kids. I usually call them little monsters, but because you should hear the mayhem. It's preschool and kindergarten. And so just imagine a room full of them running around and, just being there. So this Tuesday, just like I did last Tuesday before I left for the draft, I went to CVS. I walked through the drive-thru, and unlike last Tuesday, I didn't have to wait. I wasn't the third car in line, even though I wasn't in a car. And I waited, and the guy remembered me. I mean, I'm pretty. I'm probably the only blind guy that's walked up there to get the PCR test. And I had scheduled the test. Actually, Liz had scheduled it for me. Walked over there, did the test, scraped my brain, both sides of my nostrils until my eyes watered from each eye, and, put the stick in the tube and put the tube in the box. And again, I got an email after I did that this week from what I thought my phone was saying was Donna Tripley. I'll tell you the whole story at the other end, so stick around and wait for that because it's hysterical. So the day before the draft, I traveled to New York. And all along when I booked my train travel, and again, I did not book it myself. Someone booked it for me. It wasn't Liz. It was somebody else, which when I can talk about it, I'll talk about it. So I had a couple of choices on which train to take, and it was very nice. I was on the Acela, which I'd never been on before, primarily because I don't think it's worth the extra money, or at least I didn't at the time think it was worth the extra money to get into Penn Station in New York 10 or 15 minutes ahead of what the regular Amtrak train would get me into New York. It really isn't that big a difference as far as the time. The seats, on the other hand, and the comfort is a different story completely. So I told Jane that I said, if they ever have a good deal on Acela tickets, give that a try because it is very nice. The bins where you put your stuff, they close. It's it's almost like being on an airplane. There are tables in front of most seats, so you can, if you're working on a laptop, I was not. You can put the stuff up there. I put my backpack on the table in front of me where I sat going up. On the way back, I didn't have a table. There was a pull-down tray that I could have used. Again, I didn't because I wasn't working on anything. I was just, most of the time listening to my phone, either going through emails or listening to a podcast. And actually going up, I was listening to a fantasy football podcast. So I was hopefully ready for the draft. And I think it helps me out a lot. Now, the biggest issue for me when traveling is not getting outside of the building. It's being in the building, whether it's an airport or a train station or wherever, because there's usually no maps or whatever that can get you around the place. So you have no idea. I have no idea where I'm going. In Philadelphia, I'm used to 30th Street Station. So I know that if I walk to the middle of the terminal, that where there's stairs on both sides that go down to the platforms. I know that if I walk to the middle, I'm going to run into the information desk. And all I have to say is, hey, can you tell me what track, whatever the train number is, leaves from? And, usually they take a look at me and say, oh, we'll get somebody to help you. And the guy that helped me in Philly, it was a girl at the information desk, and she took me over to the area where I needed to wait for the train, not the platform, but above, in the terminal level. I'm standing there and a guy came over to talk with this woman and he said, no, I'm not going to be around because I'm getting ready to leave, but Randolph will be here. And of course, when she said Randolph, I wondered if this guy's name was Mortimer. And if you've ever seen Coming to America, that's where that comes from. But Randolph was so awesome. We went downstairs, he made sure, unlike the regular Amtrak, when you go on Acela, it's an assigned seat. So I knew that my seat was 6C and I was in car 3. And he told me, he said, well, when we get down there, I'm going to have to put you where you have to line up where, the car number is. And the Acela goes, I think, from Washington to Boston. So there's always, in Philadelphia and New York, there's always going to be people already on it. So Randolph took me down there when it was time. And I carried my bag. I didn't, he wasn't going to carry my bag. He was basically just helping me, find where I needed to be without, causing too much chaos for everybody else. So we're waiting in the spot. We get there and he said, I'll be right back. He said, the train should be here shortly. I'll be back in a minute or two. So when the train started to pull in, or right before, he came back and he said, okay, it takes a while for whatever reason for the doors to open up and so forth and so on. And so when the doors finally did open, there was a conductor there after a couple of people got off, and Randolph said to him, he's in 6C. And the guy said to Randolph, oh, you know what? There's a single seat a couple cars up that I know no one is sitting in from here to New York. Why don't you give him that one? Take him down to the, he said the person's name. I didn't hear it. Take him down to them and they'll get him situated. And this was awesome. So I did have a single seat by myself, so I wasn't near anybody. Now, when I got onto the car, Randolph, handed me off to this other conductor, and the conductor told me where my seat was, and then walked away. And I feel bad that I did not tip Randolph. And I'll tell you in a couple of minutes, coming back, it was a very different story. And I tipped that guy. And I was mad that I did, or I guess I was mad that I didn't tip Randolph. And it was a little bit different with the guy in New York, but I'll get to that in a minute. So as I'm taking my backpack off, someone else comes up to me and says, do you need help getting your suitcase? I had this little suitcase, with all my wardrobe requests in it. Oh, I guess I can't talk about that. Sorry. Pretend I never said that. So I had my suitcase in there with all my clothes that I was going to wear for the next 2 days because I was going to be in New York for 3 days. And it's funny because the bag that it was in was a bag that we bought in London 4 years ago when Jane was studying there. We needed one little bag, like a carry-on, to bring some stuff home in that Jane had acquired while she, spent her four months or so in London, and, all the other places she went while she was studying in London. So we bought this bag from Primark. It was 30 pounds, which I guess at the time it was around $42. And, it's a very cool thing. It basically is it's a white suitcase, mostly white, with all sorts of London monuments and things that, it's got the Black Cab on it. It's got Big Ben. It's got landmarks and iconic things of London and, different words and whatnot. So, and it almost looks like somebody took a white bag and then got a black Sharpie and started to draw on it. And again, I can't see everything that's on there. There might be other colors on there as well. But to me, it just looks like a white bag that somebody drew all these things on. And I know that we bought it this way, so I know it wasn't Jane that decorated it. So, and that's all I needed. The black bag that I usually travel with, Jane had taken to New York, so it was already in New York, and she hasn't been home since she took it. So as I'm standing there at my seat and getting situated, taking my backpack off, somebody else comes up to me and says, "Hey, do you need some help putting your bag up top?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks." Well, it turns out that guy didn't work for Amtrak. It was just another passenger who was sitting a couple seats away from me, just being helpful. And he was there with 3 other coworkers. They were going to New York to do something. I'm not quite sure what they did. But I really appreciated that. And then once we got to New York, he helped me get it down. So, that was awesome. But as we're leaving Philadelphia and the guy's coming around for tickets, and, maybe we were already halfway to Trenton by the time he did, the conductor said to me, "Do you have, where are you going?" I said, "New York." And he said, "Do you have your ticket?" I said, "I have a receipt that has a confirmation code, but I don't have any kind of barcode." Because usually when you get your own tickets from Amtrak, you can just show your phone and, it's got a barcode. The guy scans it and, done. But I didn't get that. I just had a receipt, and he just searched by my last name. He found me, and he said, "Okay, will you need help at Penn Station?" And I said, "Probably." I said, "But if it's trouble, I'm okay." He said, "No, we'll have somebody here for you." Well, when we got to New York, I didn't wait. After the line was done, had walked past me to get off, I figured, well, I'm going to just get off. And I heard someone say, "Sir, did you need help?" But I don't know who it was. I didn't know if he was talking to me. So I just kept moving. I figured, it's a building. I'll find my way out. And so I go up, from the platform. I just, like usual, you follow the herd. So hopefully not like those lemmings they threw off that cliff in that Disney movie from the 50s. And I get to the main level of Penn Station, which is much larger than 30th Street Station. And while I was there, I kind of walked around to try and see where there might be some sort of information desk. I know when I was there before with Jane, there was an information desk where you can also buy tickets off to the side. But since that time, 4 or 5 years ago, they've remodeled and redone it. It's very nice and, and so forth. So, I figured, okay, well, I'll wait until I come back. I've got plenty of time from the time the car was going to drop me off for the train and my train left, when I went home on, a couple days later. So now my goal was to find my way out and find my way to the driver who was going to pick me up. And he had texted me while I was still on the train, and I had texted him. I said, "We're not quite there yet, and I'll let you know once we're there." And he said, "Okay." He wasn't quite at the station yet either. So, when I got to the station and I got to the main level, I texted him and said, "Okay, I'm at Penn Station. Are you outside yet?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "All right, I'll try and find you." And he said he was going to be somewhere near 8th Avenue and 31st Street. So I said, okay. So I'm wandering around, and of course I can't see the signs. And previously when I was there, they had signs that hung down by each escalator that took you up to the street level. And it would say what the streets were. You're going to 8th and 33rd or 8th and 31st or whatever. So, I pull out my phone because I noticed there's some sort of writing near where the stairs are. And it just says, Moynihan Terminal or whatever. It doesn't say where the stairs go. So I hear somebody talking near me. And I go over to them and I ask them, I said, I know there's an escalator over here. Can you tell me what's up there? I said, what streets are we at? And he said, well, 33rd is behind us and 8th would be up there. So, that's probably 8th and 33rd. And then I turned away with my back towards 33rd. And I said, if I head this way, and I pointed, hoping that this guy could see, because if it was another blind guy, he's not going to see which way I'm pointing. I said, if I head that way, I can get to 31st, right? And he said, yes, probably. But, I'm not sure, if there's an exit on 31st. So I walk for a while and I see and hear another escalator and stairs. So I go up and sure enough, it's 8th and 31st. I found that out because I walked out of the building and I walked to the corner and I heard somebody on, sending text messages or whatever. And I asked them, I said, can you tell me what these streets are? And she said, well, that one's 8th. I said, okay. And I said, what's this one? She said, this one is 31st. So I thanked her. I texted the driver, who I later found out his name was Sid. And I said, I'm at 8th and 31st. And he said, okay, I'll find you. He knew that I couldn't see. And so he came and came close and picked me up. While I was waiting, I took a blind selfie. Well, I thought it was a blind selfie. It was not. I ended up taking a picture of the sidewalk and the intersection of 8th and 31st because I guess when I hit the, to flip the camera, I guess I didn't double tap it enough. When you use VoiceOver, you drag your finger around, you hear what you want to hear, and then you double tap it, whether you're looking to open an app or whatever. So I guess I hit it, heard that it was, to put the other camera on, but I didn't double tap it or whatever. Miraculously, in this picture, at 8th and 31st, there is not one pedestrian on the sidewalk in front of me, and there's not one car in the intersection. And this is at 2:30, 2:45 on a Wednesday afternoon. I was shocked. I sent it to, I don't remember if I sent it to Liz or Jane. I said, here's a blind selfie. And they're like, you're not in it. I said, yeah, I know. That's the funny part. But I wanted to take it because above each of the entrances of the station, there's these giant scoreboard type of things, changeable signs that, I don't know if they put stuff on there when there's something going on in MSG, which is also right there. And I wanted to I figured, if I did a portrait shot, my face would be down at the bottom and above it would be this sign. And I thought, man, that would be a good blind selfie. Well, I didn't get it. So Sid finds me and, he leads me to the car. He gives me his elbow, which is what you're supposed to do. If you go up to a blind person and you ask if they need help and they say yes, you give two choices. Do you want me to grab your elbow or do you want to grab mine? I usually like to, with Liz, she grabs mine because then she uses her hand signals to tell me if I should go to the right or the left. With someone else, I usually grab theirs. I'm not really comfortable doing it, to be honest, and I don't know why. But, I grabbed Sid's elbow, just above the elbow. So, where his tricep is, I guess. And, he led me to the car, a Tesla Model 3. And I get in and we're chit-chatting and I said, oh, is it far? He said, oh, no, it's not far. He said, but it'll take an hour. And we were heading to the hotel that we were staying in was a Residence Inn in New Rochelle. The draft was outside of the city in Orangeburg. So we go to this hotel. New Rochelle. And it actually, there was a last minute change. Originally, we were supposed to be in White Plains, and there was a problem with the hotel there. They had overbooked. So everybody that was in the draft, with the exception of one guy and his son, were in the Residence Inn in New Rochelle, which I can't say enough about. The help that, how much they helped me out. And I'm guessing everybody, because they just were like that. But when we got to the hotel, I offered, I wanted to give Sid a tip. He wouldn't take it because he said, everything was taken care of. And I said, okay. And again, I'll talk more about that when I can talk about the whole project. So I check in, and the person who checks me in asks me, do I need help getting to my room? And I said, I don't. I said, just, can you tell me about the elevator? And, the girl says, yes, they're to your left, and then you'll another left to go into them. And I said, okay. She said, well, you need to use the key, which is a card. You need to use the key to activate the elevator. You can't just press a button. First, you have to activate it with the key, and then you push the button. And so she came over to help me do that and basically give me the layout, which I was happy about, because again, we have to feel everything. And when I say we, blind and visually impaired folks, have to feel everything. So when she did it, I said, okay. And I was on the 6th floor in room 614. It was the second row of buttons from the top and the middle button. So I knew for the future that I could just use my elbow to hit that button to go to my floor. Now, one thing I didn't find out is what floor the lobby was and where it was on this group of buttons, which became funny later on when I went down to meet everyone. But I get to the room, and she's like, "You want me to go up with you?" I said, "No, I'll find it. I'd really like to do it on my own. I want to prove that I could do it." And between my phone and, my cane and everything else, I was pretty confident that I could find it. I mean, I didn't think anything crazy could happen inside the hotel. So I get up to the 6th floor, and the area where the elevators leave off, there's one handicap room off to the right, and then there's a hallway, and then there's a seating area. And it turns out there was a pool on our floor. I didn't go in it. By the time I got there, I believe it was closed. And I found a sign, and fortunately these signs, unlike the ones that I talked about when I was in Orlando and Max and I were looking for a room, these letters and numbers were raised so that I could feel that 614, was in, I had to make a left down a hallway. So once I made that left, I went to the first room on the left, and I felt what number it was. And I went to that room first because that was the first room on the floor. If there was one on the right, I would have gone to that. I felt that was room 610. So I knew that it was coming up, and, I could, I just had to go 2 doors down. And so I went 2 doors down, did the card thing around the door, went in, and then immediately went and washed my hands, and then got out a wipe to wipe down my cane and my suitcase and my sunglasses, because I had taken them off while my hands were still dirty, and did all that. And the room was, if you've ever been to a Residence Inn, I'm sure they're all pretty much the same. There was a big living room, and there was a big bedroom, and, the bathroom and a kitchen area. And, I texted Jane, and I said, I said, this hotel room is as big as your apartment, just minus one bedroom. I said, but the living room's easily as big as her living room, at her apartment. And certainly of the 3 places that she lived, the one she's in now is the largest of the 3. And this room was easily as big as that, the other two units that she's lived in. So I get situated, and I'm texting with Liz, and I'm like, oh, I didn't get my results yet. Let me check. And so I take a look, and, as I said last week, I was negative, which everybody knows I'm negative, but they didn't think that kind of negative. So, I was good to go. I had to send those results to someone for the project that I'll talk about in October, once it's released. And, I thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I better call Brian and see what's going on, because I'd like to get to meet everybody and see what the story is. So I called Brian, and he's like, oh my God, I forgot all about you. I said, we're downstairs. He said, we're downstairs in the lobby. We're about to go to Buffalo Wild Wings. I said, there's a Buffalo Wild Wings? And he said, yeah. He said, do you believe that? When he and I talked a few days earlier or the week before, he was very excited about the going to White Plains, because there was a Buffalo Wild Wings within walking distance of the hotel, and he's always wanted to go. He's a huge sports fan. And I guess that's why he started the league, because he's just into sports and into fantasy sports and whatnot. So he said, we're going over there. He said, do you want to go? And I said, oh yeah. And so, I went downstairs, and this is where the elevator got a little confusing, because, again, I'm guessing. I didn't want to touch anything. I didn't have any wipes with me. I'm going to go eat. So I didn't want to, start touching a lot of things. So I take a guess at what might be the lobby. And I think it's the one all the way to the left, right below floor number 2. And I hit the button with my elbow. And I get there and I'm like, doesn't look familiar, doesn't seem right. And then I realize, hey, I think I'm in the basement. And I go to another floor. I don't know what floor it was. And I then hit the button, swipe the card, hit the button again. And I go back to that same floor. I'm like, nope, this definitely isn't it. So then I thought, okay, this isn't it. Let me find, there was another button on that same row, but all the way to the right, and then there was a big gap in between. So I hit that button, and sure enough, that was the one. And, I get to the lobby, and I get to meet everybody. And I was surprised, although I guess I shouldn't have been, because Brian had mentioned that he had never met anybody else face-to-face other than Ed. Brian and Ed do a podcast called That Real Blind Tech Show, and they do it with somebody named Allison. And they had done another podcast for years as well, and they had never met face-to-face. Allison and her husband hadn't come in yet. But, we ended up meeting her later once we had finished dinner. And it was the first time they had, met each other face to face, which I just couldn't believe. So we, we're meeting everybody, and it was so awesome to be face to face with, again, people that have very similar interests and are also blind and visually impaired, and to get to spend time with them. It was just outstanding to do that. So we go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and, we eat, and, we're all talking. And again, it's, the first time, most of us are talking with one another. And one thing that struck me and made me a little nervous as we're sitting there talking, when I first signed up to do the league a few years ago, and the league's been this is the 6th season. I've been in it. This is my 5th season. The first year I was in it, I was in the championship, and it's been downhill ever since. With the cratering, the year that I was at a Head in the Heart concert and the draft, instead of the draft, and the auto pick gave me 2 kickers, and I'll get to that in a minute because I have 2 kickers this year too. That's my own fault. And I had 2 tight ends, and I might have even had 2 defenses. So, we're at Buffalo Wild Wings. We're all talking, and we're listening to this one guy who's new to the league. His name is Dom. And I remember one of the things that I had asked Brian back when I first joined. I said, oh, do you do the independent defensive players? He's like, oh, no, everybody's new to fantasy here. We just, do team defense. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm sitting there, and I'm listening to everybody talk. And everybody is so knowledgeable about it. I'm like, oh, my God, I just, I am the dummy. I was the one that was the dummy. Now, it turns out there were 1 or 2 other people, and I don't know that I'll throw them under the bus, but, I'll talk about it once I get into talking about the draft. So, we have dinner, and, we're all chit-chatting and, learning a little about each other. And, it was just crazy how, some people were born without sight. Some people lost their sight along the way. I was at dinner. I was sitting next to Frank, in between Frank and Ed, and Dominic was across from Frank, and Rick was across from me. Now, some people brought a companion to help them out. which I completely get. And for example, Rick, who was sitting across from me, was there with his son, Ryan. Rick flew in from Sacramento. Nick, the 4-time defending champ, he came in from Montreal. He had his girlfriend, Edith, who is sighted. Ryan is also sighted. But Edith was so helpful at the draft. There were all sorts of things that we had to do that we'd probably still be there doing it if it weren't for her. And she really reminded me of Liz because, she just jumped in and helped out when we were signing all sorts of papers and so forth and so on. So, it was awesome that she was there. I mean, it was just unreal how helpful she was. So, so we finished dinner and we go back and we're talking in the hotel for a while in the lobby. And at that point, Allison and TJ come down and, when they meet Brian face-to-face for the first time, and again, they've talked, I don't know how many hours and hours and hours they've talked on podcasts and, preparing for podcasts. I just couldn't believe that was the first time they had met face-to-face. So, the next morning comes, some people had to go to the site of the draft earlier than others, but there were 6 of us from the hotel that had to all go at the same time. So again, there were SUVs for us. 2 of us were in each car. So I went with Ed and Janine and Jennifer, who were sisters. They went up in a car, and I think it was Dominic and Frank went up in a car. And it was nice to, sit and talk on the way, and there wasn't a lot going on. It was probably half an hour, 45 minutes in the car from the hotel to the site of the draft, which, again, I will talk about in October. It was in Orangeburg, New York, so I don't know if that'll help you figure out where, but it doesn't really matter. So we get to the draft, and, there's food for us to have, and I had jerk chicken with some rice and some veggies. It was very good, and had a salad. I didn't eat too much of that because I was, the dressing was going all over my beard. I just didn't want that to happen. And, we're all just sitting around talking. And at this point, the draft order comes out. And I really wanted the first pick because I really wanted Christian McCaffrey. Because I was all set to use that line from Anchorman, Sex Panther. 60% of the time, it works all the time, or it works every time, or something like that. And I did use it because Frank got the number 1 pick, and hopefully for him he'll work out. But I got the second pick, and I was happy with that. But the site of the draft, there were, Ed had some trouble getting his laptop online. So I can imagine, I knew that if there were trouble like that, it could really throw you off. I know for me, it would really throw me off. And, before we went into the draft, I was talking to Nick, and he was asking if he could use his earbuds as opposed to listening to his voiceover and everybody else's voiceover telling him what's going on. Because we were drafting using the app on our phones, the Yahoo Fantasy app, which, again, as I mentioned last week, is just outstanding, how accessible it is. In fact, I have not been on the Yahoo website since the draft to go through my lineup or look up to pick up players. And I'll get into that in a minute after I tell you about my 2 kickers. I've used my phone the whole time. I'm just more comfortable doing that now. And part of the reason is, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, my vision is I just can't zoom in enough anymore for a lot of things. And it's just easier to listen. In fact, before the draft, I was thinking about buying a laptop if I could learn voiceover on the Mac, which I couldn't. I mean, like I told you before, there is a different button for everything. And under the gun for that, I just wasn't going to do that. I ended up buying an iPad, which is still sitting in a box right down here in Studio B behind me. I'm going to take it back because if you didn't hear the news, Apple announced new iPads. So I'll take this one back and get a different one, get the newer version for the same price. So, as Nick was saying, so many things would distract him in there. We're all in there. There's a whole bunch of people in this room, and we were seated in the kitchen of this house where we did the draft, and it was a very big kitchen. Some people were seated at an island. We were seated at a table, and I was sitting next to Frank and Janine, and across from me was Rick, and next to Rick was Dom. And again, the in-person draft, I have always loved doing that because, again, you get together, you talk with people, and this was just great because we've never met. And it was so outstanding to be with them and joke with them and so forth and so on. So it was awesome to be there. But like I said, Ed was having trouble, and I knew that if something like that happened to me, it would be so difficult for me to draft because I just don't remember stuff like I used to. And the way Brian had to draft, he didn't even have his phone. He was basically shouting out who's left because somebody was running the draft for him. Because we had to pause it and so forth and so on. Again, October. And so you just hear a voice from another room saying, players that are still available. And he would just pick one and, shout it out. And that guy his name was Colin. He would punch it in for him. And so I felt bad for Ed because, he had everything set up to do with spreadsheets and, who he was going to take and so forth and so on. And it just would fluster you to the point where you just completely forget your whole game plan. Just like Nick was saying out front, he didn't want to hear everybody else's voiceover talking. And, so most of us put in earbuds or AirBuds, depending on, I won't get the AirBuds because I know I'll lose them in less than a minute. And so we're doing the draft, and like I said, Frank and Janine and Rick and Dom were at my table while Brian and Ed and Allison and TJ and the aforementioned 4-time champ Nick were at the island. And so it was awesome. So we're going back and forth, and we're picking, and it was just interesting to see. And there were 3 people that weren't available to make it on site. So they were drafting. 2 people were from Louisiana. 1 guy was from Southern California. In fact, I played him this week and won. But it was just so much fun to pick these guys. So, of course, I took Dalvin Cook from Minnesota. He did okay, and I'm okay with that. And the nice thing about the first 3 to 5 guys in the draft, and thank God I wasn't 5th because I would have taken Ezekiel Elliott, and that would have been horrible because he had a horrible game if you watch that. And I'll get into that in a minute. It was just awesome to be there with everybody, and Janine had never played fantasy sports before, so she's sitting next to me. Well, maybe she wasn't as knowledgeable as some of the other folks. She was really into it, and it was a lot of fun, and she made it a lot of fun. And the one thing that I didn't understand, TJ and Allison have a team together, they're husband and wife. Janine has Jennifer, her sister, who's very much into football. I don't know why she wasn't in with Janine because, it would have been helpful for Janine because Jennifer evidently knows about football and or more about football than Janine. So it would have been nice if she were there to help her out and, to be part of the trash talking bit, which there was some of, just not a lot of. And, as I said to Nick, I should want to beat you to make sure you don't win again. But geez, he is so nice. And, again, Edith, I can't tell you how helpful she was to all of us. I told him, I hope you win again if I don't win. He said, oh, thanks for the kiss of death. And it really is. So I'm sorry, Nick. So we go through the draft, and it goes, after some hiccups at the beginning, it goes okay. Towards the end, of course, if you've ever done fantasy sports, it gets harder to pick because you're like, oh, what do I need? Who has these bye weeks? And, you obviously don't want to take 2 quarterbacks with the same bye week. So I was putting players in the queue so that I could know that if I go and, the one guy's not there, I could pick the other guy. Well, I was doing that for a couple of different positions. One was kicker. And I did that, and I put Justin Tucker in. He's my favorite. I love the Ravens, so I was hoping to get him. He went pretty early, way too early for me to take a kicker. So I thought, okay, my next choice would be Kansas City's kicker, Harrison Butker. And so I put him in, and I put a couple other players in. One of them was Michael Badgley. Well, after the draft, and after I drafted him by accident, because I did get Harrison Butker, and I'll tell you this story in a minute. Somebody comes up to me, and I think it was Frank, and he said, I don't think that guy made the team. And sure enough, he didn't. But the problem with that I had two guys in my queue. I was on the clock and I was distracted. So for the first, I don't know, I think there was 2 minutes in between picks. For the first minute, I wasn't paying attention because I might have been talking to someone, which happens when you're drafting in person. When you're drafting by yourself, you're sitting in a room by yourself and there's no distractions like that. So I go to my queue and I've got two players in there, Michael Badgley and the now hurt Washington quarterback. And I wanted the quarterback from Washington, different bye week than my quarterback, Jalen Hurts from the Eagles. And I thought, I heard a couple of podcasts with different guys saying, he's kind of a sleeper. And I probably wouldn't use him much, but, the week that the Eagles are off, I'll obviously use him. It has a different bye week. I was going to put Tua in from the Dolphins, but he has the same bye week as the Eagles. So all of a sudden the clock starts ticking down and making beeping noises at me. So I got to hurry up and pick Fitzpatrick. And I swipe once to the right, which I think is then to draft, and I double tap. And now I have removed him from my queue. And now the only player I have in my queue is Michael Badgley, which, because he was in my queue, gets automatically drafted on my team. So I drafted two kickers, and I get up and I go over to Brian. And meanwhile, a couple of other teams have drafted. And I go over to Brian and said, I just got a second kicker. Can we go back without messing everybody else up? He said, no, that would mess everybody else up, and just, fix it later. I said, okay. Again, this was late. I don't know what round, 14th or 15th round. I don't remember where. It was towards the end. So I have two kickers. One I wanted, one I didn't. And I figured, okay, I'll draft, I'll pick up somebody on waivers and he'll be the guy I drop. So a couple days, we finished the draft, and I'll get back to what happens with Badgley in a minute. We finished the draft, and, we then go to this, I guess it was more of a bar than a restaurant. It was, I guess, a bar that had some food. But it was so loud. We go because we're going to watch the game, the Bucks and the Cowboys. And it was so loud in there. Every surface was hard, whether it was glass or wood or something. It was hard. So we couldn't even hear each other. People across the table from us, we couldn't hear each other. There's 12 of us at a table because Colin from Yahoo, Colin was with us. And, so there's 12, maybe 13 with him. I'm not sure. Forget about hearing, I was closer to one end of the table where Colin was down the one end, but the other end of the table was Rick and Ryan. There was no way we were going to hear them. So, we were sitting there talking, and I was sitting next to Brian. I said, we don't have to stay here. Why don't we go, we can always go back to Buffalo Wild Wings. It would probably be almost as noisy, but at least we know, the acoustics in there were better than here. And, we decided that's what we would do. Well, in New Rochelle, I don't know how many Uber drivers there are. I think there's 4. And, so the wait for an Uber was crazy long. The people that first got one to go scope out Buffalo Wild Wings and Applebee's, which were right next to one another and right across like a promenade type of thing from the hotel, both were about a half an hour wait. But the wait for the Uber was, I think originally Allison said it was 18 minutes or something like that. So she actually was able to, finish her drink and, maybe even eat an appetizer once they came. So they go and, they say it's a half an hour. And meanwhile, we're, at this point, we're waiting. We've ordered an Uber or Lyft, not sure which. I think Colin did it for us. Colin was going with us. So I went with Colin and Brian and Brian's dog Wesley. And finally, he orders the one and, then gets a call from the guy saying, yeah, I'm about 2 blocks down the street and why don't you come down here and meet me? And, Colin is like, I'm with some visually impaired folks. You got to come here. And the guy hangs up on him and then cancels. So then he orders again, and we get a guy named Jimmy who had an SUV. So it was nice because Wesley, the dog, could get in the back after Colin lifted him up and put him in there. And, we go, and it's not far from this place to where we were heading. And, it was sad. Jimmy had the game on, and so it was kind of funny. Something happened in the game, and Jimmy and Brian and Colin, who loves fantasy football, all are like, yeah, because I don't remember if it was something Prescott did. I had CeeDee Lamb, but it wasn't a pass to him. I don't remember exactly what went on, but Prescott did something. And so we're talking about fantasy football, and he's, and the talk became of something. I don't know if it became COVID related or, what Jimmy did besides driving for, the ride share. And he said, well, I used to own a restaurant, but we had to close because of COVID. And I thought that was horrible. We've talked about this. I've talked about this on other podcast episodes, and, just brutal. This poor guy is probably just trying to make ends meet now, and God knows how much debt he's in from the failed business. And, I just can't imagine how horrible that is and what you're scrambling to do to keep up with everything. So we get to, Buffalo Wild Wings, we watch the game, we order and so forth and so on. And it was awesome. It was a lot easier talking there, at the bar that we were at, besides it being all hardscape everywhere. They had one speaker in the ceiling, and it was like at the front of the place. So it was really loud. So at the back of the place, you could hear it. And, our table was probably in the middle, maybe closer to the front than the back, but more so the middle. So it was just impossible. Buffalo Wild Wings, there were speakers all over the place. So while it was loud, we could still talk. And it was great. It was great hanging out there with them and with everybody. And it was just awesome, meeting everyone and talking with everyone and getting to know about them. And it was very cool. A couple of the people, one guy, Dom, is from Burlington, New Jersey, which isn't far from me comparative to, where everybody else is from. Brian and Ed. Brian is from New York, lives in Astoria. Ed and Frank live on Long Island. TJ and Allison are from Cincinnati, and Jennifer and Janine are from Columbus. So everybody, traveled a distance except for, the guys from Long Island and New York. They were driven to the hotel, and Dom also took a car from Burlington to New York. And then I took the train. Everybody else flew in. So it was just awesome getting together with everybody. It was just so cool. And to hang out with them and get to know them. And, now, we've exchanged, texts and emails, and, there's of course a message board on the, on the app, which everybody jumps in on, which is very cool and just awesome. So I'm pretty happy with my team. Whether I do better than last year, that remains to be seen, but I am want to know, like I said. So I have this Michael Badgley guy. He's the kicker for no team at this point. And I'm on, I don't know if I was on the train home. I don't remember where I was, but, I'm looking and, the Ravens have had running back issues. All the guys got hurt. And the next thing I hear, I don't know if I was reading an email. I guess I was in the hotel reading an email before I left for the day. And I'm going through an email from, one of the fantasy places I get some information from. And it says Latavius Murray signs with the Ravens. I'm like, oh, I always love that guy. I don't remember why, because he's not a top tier running back, but there's something about him I like. I'm like, oh my God, I like him, and he's going to play for the Ravens. How cool! Put in the waiver claim. Well, I drafted second, so the chances of him being there when it came down to me were slim and none. And of course, he was gone. Brian took him. Brian picked eighth. So, I got an email from Frank, and Frank said, Badgley got signed by Tennessee. And I said, yeah, but I still don't need 2 kickers, and I'm going to try and, do a waiver claim on someone and get rid of them. So, okay, so that waiver claim fails. I'm listening to a podcast, and I'm thinking, oh, here's a guy you should have on your team because running back from San Francisco, Mostert, got hurt. I'm like, I'm going to pick that guy up. His name is Mitchell. And do the waiver claim with the kicker again, who, watching NFL Red Zone for week 1, they have him on as he's attempting, I don't remember, I think it was like a 40-yard field goal. He missed it. Not that I was playing him, but I thought this guy's not even going to last on this team. And sure enough, he was cut the next day. And Frank sent me an email to tell me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get that Mitchell guy, Elijah Mitchell from San Francisco, because he's going to get more carries than their rookie and blah, blah, blah. So I put in the waiver claim. Again, I think I was 6th or 8th for the waivers. So I still thought, it's, might be hit or miss if I get this guy. But, the guy who got him ended up being the guy that I played last week. And, I knew that maybe, Nick might grab him. But the guy who grabbed him is SoCal Stallions. I think his name is Andy, because he wasn't there. We didn't meet. But he grabbed him, and I'm like, oh my God, seriously? So meanwhile, that kicker's, he's not on any team, but he's on my fantasy team. So I still have Michael Badgley. If you've got an offer for me, I'm listening. I'll listen to any offers for him. So it was, like I said, it was a lot of fun. So Friday, have breakfast up in the at the hotel, which I had missed the day before because I didn't know there was even a breakfast available, which is part of the our room rate. So I had to. The first day up there, so the day of the draft, Thursday, I had to, I went downstairs and I said, is there any place in the hotel to get, I just needed hot tea. I was going to have a protein bar for breakfast, but I needed hot tea. And she's like, oh, breakfast ended, at 9:30. I said, oh, I didn't even know there was breakfast. And she says, yeah, it goes till 9:30 every morning. And I said, okay, I'll remember that for tomorrow. I said, is there a coffee shop close by, Starbucks or something? And she says, oh, right across the street. And her name was Denise. She came from behind the counter and we walked outside and she said, it's right over there. And, she said, I said, yeah, okay, well, where's the crosswalk? Oh, she says, no, we're in the middle of the block. There's no crosswalk. I said, oh, never mind then. It was starting to rain and I'm not going to walk up to a corner and cross. As I've mentioned on previous episodes, I just have never been comfortable, even as a little kid, but never been comfortable crossing a street, especially where there's not a crosswalk where I can gauge how traffic is going, and whatnot. And she said, well, I'll walk you across. I said, oh, that's great. I really appreciate that, but I still got to come back the other way. And she's like, okay, take this number down in your phone, punch it in, and call me when you're done. I said, okay, I really appreciate that. Thank you. So she walks me across, and I order my English breakfast tea with no cream. And surprisingly, the Standard Bean in New Rochelle, New York, has lemons, unlike Starbucks. And so I got some lemon in it. It was awesome. Called the number. I talked to Denise. I said, hi, it's the blind guy at the coffee shop. I'm all set. And I walk out of the coffee shop and I go to the edge of the street. And I'm waiting, and there's some work vans that I'm standing near. And then, I'm like, it doesn't sound like there's any traffic. Maybe I should just go. Well, I didn't. And I don't remember if I could have made it or not. But then the guy comes up to me. He's like, I'm here to take you back to the hotel. I said, oh, okay. Well, I don't know what his name was. He was so concerned for me. He was like draped over me. He had his one arm around me and his other arm holding, he must have thought I was like glass and, just guiding me and, and I thought it was kind of funny. And, again, because of COVID, not too comfortable with that, but whatever. I got across the street safely and back into the hotel. And I thanked him, and then I thanked Denise, who was, behind the counter. And, then went to the draft. And so Friday, we have breakfast up in this, I guess it's like a lounge. I wouldn't call it a restaurant. I think it's only where they do the breakfast. It was up on the 10th floor, and, somebody said to me, how did you find it? I said, I knew it was on the 10th. I said, it was a 50-50 shot. I could either go to the left or go to the right. There was something in the middle. So, I always, right-hand rule. I went to the right and, found it, heard people, talking and stuff like that. So as I get closer, I'm, sweeping my cane. And somebody says, Dominic? And I said, oh, Ed, no, it's David. And he said, oh, David, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He said, do you want to sit down with me? And I said, sure. And so I sit with him. Within a minute, a girl who I later found out her name was Latoya asks, if I, what she could get from me. I said, oh, you don't get it yourself? And she's like, you do, but, do you want to do it yourself? I can do it for you. It'll make it a lot easier. I said, oh, that would be great. So I get some oatmeal and some yogurt and tea, of course. And I was really just going there. Had Ed not been there, I probably just would have gotten a cup of tea and then gone back to my room, eaten the protein bar and been done. But I was glad because Ed and I talked for a bit, and then Frank came up, and the three of us talked, and then Ed left, and then Frank and I left, and so we said we'd see each other down in the lobby. So we go down to the lobby. By the time I get down there, Frank is gone. And I got down there, I don't know, maybe 11:15. Everybody was supposed to be picked up at 11. Frank had already gone. And so I'm down there with Brian and I think Dom and Nick and Edith. And I think that was it. And, all of a sudden, 3 SUVs pull up. And it's for Edith and Nick and Brian and Dominic. And none for me. And so they leave, and I'm standing there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm like, uh-oh. Now, I wasn't too concerned because it's 11 o'clock. It was going to be a half an hour to an hour back to Penn Station, and my train didn't leave until 3. So I wasn't too concerned, but I was a little worried that, okay, who do I call if they never show? So another 5 or 10 minutes goes by, and I get a phone call. And they say, hi, we're from BLS, which is the car company that was, driving us all over. Your driver was in an accident and we got to send another car, but driver's not going to be there for another 45 minutes. I said, okay, not a problem. And she apologized, and I asked about the driver, and he was okay. It turns out that somebody was texting and ran into him. And the car was pretty badly damaged. So, 11:45, 10:12, other driver shows up. I had to go to the bathroom, but I didn't want to leave the lobby in case they showed up. So after I loaded, my suitcase and my backpack in the car, I said to the driver, I said, I know it's half an hour to an hour. I said, I'm just going to run back in and go to the bathroom, which at this point I didn't remember where the bathroom was. And I also thought, well, I need a key to get up to any floor if it's not on the main floor, which it wasn't. It was on the 6th floor. There was one right by the pool, right around the corner from my room. I had already checked out, though, so I didn't have a card. So the girl swipes her card, and then as the door is closing, she's like, wait. And it was too late. I couldn't hit the button to open the door. And I'm like, I wonder what she was waiting for. So I go to the bathroom, and I'm washing my hands. I'm like, oh, how am I going to get back to the lobby without the card? I don't know how I was able to do it, but I was. And it worked out, and got in the car and go. So I'm going over my phone, in the car, heading back into the city. And, all of a sudden I don't feel great. And I'm wondering, am I getting motion sick? I think it was a Cadillac SUV. And, most SUVs, the back seat is split, 2 on one side and then a separate seat, even though it looks like one long bench, so you can fold some down if you've got longer stuff, whatever. I'm sitting in the single seat, and it's kind of loose. So every time we're bumping and, making lane changes, I'm swaying around something, and, maybe it's motion sickness. Now, when I use my phone, even though I can't see my phone, I still hold it like I'm looking at it. I don't know why. I realized this at the draft. I don't know if that's just the comfortable position. And it's comfortable up to a point for me because my hands always hurt. It's not always comfortable, and sometimes I put it down on the counter. Obviously, in the back of a car, there's not any kind of counter to put it on. So all of a sudden, I'm feeling really nauseous, and the guy is driving, and I'm feeling nauseous, and I'm like, is it motion sickness? Did I get COVID? At the house where we did the draft, there's a lot of people, we're unmasked. Everybody had, COVID tests, and everybody in the league had, been vaccinated, but, still. So, I realized that, as I'm, so I stopped using my phone, and I just, tried to look around. And one thing that I've noticed, when my vision is really bad, even if I'm just sitting down or, trying to look, I get nauseous because of, things look distorted and, more distorted than normal. So, I'm thinking maybe it's that, but like I've got like the cold sweats and I'm nauseous and I'm like, oh my God, what if I just want to get out of this car and I knew we're not into the city yet. And then once we get into the city, forget it, stop and go traffic and, jumping from lane to lane. And at one point the driver said, where do you want me to let you out? I felt like saying, just stop the car now and I'll just walk the rest of the way. So we get to the station and I feel horrible and I'm thinking, do I have COVID? Should I get on the train? So again, not familiar with Penn Station. I do one lap around and I was worried that, I walked down the stairs with my suitcase and my knees were a little shaky too. I'm thinking, oh my God, what is going on? But I get down and I do a lap and, I'm dragging my suitcase, which fortunately has wheels. And I thought, let me go into the bathroom. So I go into the men's room. And there are 3 stalls. I figured I'll just stand in there for a while. Again, I have plenty of time. So I figured I'll just stand in there in case I have to get sick. There's 3 stalls. One of them, the lock doesn't work. One of them doesn't even have a door. And one of them, the lock doesn't really work, but it's enough. There's a little bit of an edge on it that it, keeps it shut. I go in that one. And I just stand in there for a while. Now I want to put my backpack down. I want to hang my backpack on the hook that's hanging usually in every other men's room stall on the planet. Usually a hook or something where you can put your backpack. Well, not in this one. So here's my backpack sitting on the bathroom floor at Penn Station. God only knows what's on that. I stand in there for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, and I start to feel a little better. And, I go back out and I thought, now I've got to find where I need to go. I still don't feel 100%, but I feel better than I did, 10 minutes before. I do another lap around and I notice the lounge, the Amtrak lounge. If you have a ticket, you can go in there. And I thought, well, if I go in here, at least I could sit down and, hopefully I'll feel a little better. So I go in there and, as I'm walking in, the girl said to me, do you have a ticket? And I said, yeah, I'm on the, whatever, the 6133 or 6131 Estella. I don't remember what the number was. I think 6131. And 3:00 to Philadelphia. And she's like, okay, you can come in and sit wherever. So I go in and I'm sitting down for a couple of minutes. All of a sudden, I don't feel good again. So I get up and I start walking around and I do another lap, hoping that I'll walk it off. And I still don't feel great, but I see places to eat. I see Starbucks is right next to the lounge. And I'm thinking maybe if I ate something or drank something, I'd feel better. Or if I ate or drank something, I'll throw up. And I don't like to throw up to begin with. And I certainly don't want to throw up here. And I certainly don't want to have to go back to the bathroom. But I thought, I better go back. Fortunately, that stall was open. I go back in there. I stand in there for a couple minutes. And again, I start to feel better. So I make my way back. I'm heading back to the lounge. And I notice a convenience place that I take out my phone and it reads me that it's Hudson News. And they're all over the place in New York City. It's like a little convenience place you get. Jane goes there or used to go there to buy magazines, all the magazines that the PR company would go through to, see if their clients got coverage. And so I go in there and girl sees me walk in and she comes over to me. Can I help you? I said, yeah. I said, I'm looking for pretzels and, a bottle of Evian. And she's like, oh, we don't have any Evian. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll just get the pretzels. And she says, hang on one second. Let me see if we got any in the back. She went in the back and she brings out a 0.5-liter bottle of Evian. And it was, I gave her a 10. I think it was a 10. I don't remember. And I get back like 3 ones and some change for a 0.5-liter bottle of water and a small bag of pretzels. So I saved the receipt because she gave me the receipt too, because I wanted to know what that 0.5-liter bottle of Evian, we get Evian at BJ's and it's roughly like $1.10, $1.12 a bottle for a liter. Jane gets it on sale at the supermarket she goes to in New York, and it's 3.5 liter bottles for $4.50. So this 0.5-liter bottle costs almost as much as the 3 1.5-liter bottles Jane got the last time she was shopping. Whatever it was, I didn't care because at some point I thought maybe I would have it, and I ended up not ever having them there. I ended up drinking the water just the other day here. And the pretzels I ate once I got home. In fact, Ziggy and I ate them. And they weren't as good as the usual things we have, pretzel rounds, which I call pretzel balls, and he now knows them only as pretzel balls. But I got on so I go back to the lounge, and I'm sitting in the lounge, and I tell the lady that I'm going to be on the 3:00 train to Philly. And she said, okay, well, it's too soon to get on yet. And I went back over at around 2:20, 2:30. And at this point, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm sitting there. I'm listening to a conversation between a girl who's in college and either her mom and stepdad or mom and some other family member. It was interesting to hear, she was going to be on the train. I don't know where she was going, but she was going to be on the train for like 4.5 hours. So I'm not quite sure where she was going. And, I closed my eyes. I never fell asleep, but I closed my eyes and I just sat there, and I felt a lot better when it was time to leave to get on the train. I go back over to the desk where I came in and I said, okay, I'm on the train to Philly. She's like, oh, you can't see? And I wanted to say, what gave that away? The white cane but I didn't. And I said, no. She said, can you see me at all? And I said, yeah, I have a little bit of vision. I said, but, can you see, what do you just see my silhouette? And she was very interested until I finally said, yeah, I see a little bit, I can tell you have glasses on and blah, 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 blah. I said, is there someone that can help me find the stairs that I need to go down to get on the Acela? And she says, yes, come with me. And the best part about this lady, after dealing with, the 20 questions for what I can see and what I can't see, was she didn't walk slowly. I walked behind her. I said, as long as you're making a little bit of noise, I'll follow behind you. And she walked at a New York pace, which was great because I can't stand to walk slow. And I always feel comfortable when there's somebody in front of me who is walking at a good clip, who knows I'm behind them. And, I don't have to sweep because, again, that hurts my hand when I do that. It's horrible. So we go over to this desk and a guy says, oh, does he need help with his bag? I said, I can carry my bag. But this guy's like he didn't want to do it. And I didn't get his name, but he did end up helping me. And he's like, are you okay going down the escalator? I'm like, yeah, I mean, my legs are fine. I just can't see. I didn't say that, but, why wouldn't I be okay going down an escalator? Because I'm not going to touch the railing because it's COVID season? Liz never touched the rail well before COVID, as I think I've mentioned before. So we go down there, and the guy helps me to the spot that I need to be to get on the train at the right spot. I was in seat 9D in car 5. And so he takes me all the way to the seat, and he puts my bag up, which wasn't right above my head. It was like the next bin down. And, I give him a couple bucks. And at that point, I was mad that I gave him money and I didn't give Randolph. Randolph was so helpful and so friendly, and this guy was less than Randolph friendly. But, I sit down and there's a guy in a seat next to me. And that's the other thing. Randolph really tried to make me as comfortable and tried to be as helpful as possible. This other guy was just doing his job. So, on the train and, where I'm sitting now, the cold air is blowing on me and I'm not 100% comfortable, but whatever. I'm on the train. I knew I'll be home in an hour and change. Liz was going to pick me up. And, rest of the trip was uneventful. Get to 30th Street. Liz had parked out in the quick pickup area where you can, she didn't put anything in the meter, but she came in anyway. Car was still there when we went back out. And she met me at the top of the escalator, and we walked out to the car and got in the car and came home. As we're getting closer to home, though, I started to feel sick again. And I told her, I said, I hope I don't have it. Like, I hadn't even touched her at this point, because I was afraid. I said, what do you think? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, I want to schedule a COVID test. I said, I think we should give it a couple of days just to make sure. So I did the COVID test, as I mentioned, and also came back negative. A lot easier this time for the COVID test because I knew what to expect, I guess. And so that brings me to. So it was just an all around. It was just a great trip, and it was. And again, I'll talk more about it in October. But it was just so awesome to be there with everyone and to meet them and to get to do all this stuff with them. It was just outstanding. And, I can't thank Brian enough for putting it all together and doing it. It was just awesome. So it was very cool. And so now I'm home and, now it's just back to the same old stuff, watching Ziggy while Liz is at school and so forth and so on. So I do the COVID test on Tuesday, a couple days ago. I'm recording this on Thursday, the day it drops. And I don't know, like an hour or two later, I go check my email, ican'tseeyouPodcast@gmail.com, where you should email if you have any kind of show ideas. And I get this email like I did the week before from somebody called Donna Tripley at CBS.com or CBSHealth.com. Not quite sure. That part doesn't matter. It's the Donna Tripley. And I'm like, okay. So I go into the app to see if I knew they couldn't have had my results already because I didn't get the rapid test. I got the PCR test. So an hour or two later, I get another email, but it's not from CVS. It's from ADP. So it sounds like it says Donna Tripley. I'm like, what? This, with all the email issues I've been having, over the last month, I'm like, come on, tell me this account is not messed up now too. So I'm like, let me go character by character with VoiceOver. And it says ADPDONOTREPLY. ADP do not reply. VoiceOver makes it sound like it says Donna Tripley, or in the ADP version, Donna Tripley. And, all of a sudden I felt much better because, again, I thought I'd been hacked with that account. And I'm thinking, is anything safe on my computer? And, when I read that it was a do not reply account, again, breathed a sigh of relief. But, and that's what happens sometimes with VoiceOver. Things that are spelled one way sound like something else. And that happened when I was reading. Lisa will send me her articles before she sends them to the editor of the different publication or website that she's doing them for to proofread. And I like to proofread them on my computer because I go paragraph by paragraph, and it's just a lot easier hearing it. And, if I have a question about something, I can zoom in on it usually and see what it says. Sometimes there's an errant space in between two letters, or there's, a paragraph ending when, there shouldn't be one or whatever. So, when I read it on my phone, and this one day she had sent me when I was trying to do it on my phone, but it was sounding weird. And so I was going character by character, just like I did for the Donna Tripley and Donna Tripley. And I thought, you know what, I just have to wait till I get on the computer. And I waited, and then I went down and I checked her article, and it was good. But, and we were talking about this, I don't know if it's because I have some emails that have to deal with France. So NICE, if it's not capitalized or capitalized, it'll say Nice instead of nice. And I think it's hysterical. And other words are like that as well. So it's just kind of weird. But, the email with Donna Tripley is just hysterical. Now now whenever I get a do not reply email, I'm just going to laugh because, it was just funny. So again, it was an all-around great time. And I know I've rambled on a long time with this episode, and I really appreciate you sticking with it. It's been episode 143 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. Please reach out via that email address that I mentioned, ican'tseeyouPodcast@gmail.com. Show notes will be at ican'tseeyou.com/143. Remember, I Can't See You sounds like a whole sentence, but it is only 7 characters long. ican'tseeyou.com/143. And again, if you have show ideas, having a comment or question, please call the tip line, 646-926-6350. You have 3 minutes, but in that 3 minutes, make sure you leave your name and your town. And let me know it's okay to use your voice on an upcoming episode. I think that would be great and a lot of fun. Even if you have bad things to say, that's okay too. Even if you're trash talking my team, which is FC Tunguska, it's probably deserved. But again, I really do appreciate you listening, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe, and I will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.